Hello, this is the movie for the Lesson 5 presentation for welding representation. Our objectives for this unit, this lesson, are describe the various welding processes, and number 2, define the types of welded joints, and number 3, draw the common welding symbols. Number 4, dimension a welding drawing using standard ANSI welding notations. Number 5, identify and draw the correct symbols for a fillet weld, groove weld, back weld, spot weld, seam weld, projection weld, and flash weld. And then finally, correctly apply welding symbols on a working drawing. This slide here shows us our general note for a welding process. It's pretty complex. There's a lot of different elements to it, but we're going to break it down. But this is the general note that tells us where things go on a welding note. So it's attached to a part by a leader. It has a tail on here, and then the specification over here is just typed in there, the type of process it is. And then we'll talk about these other symbols in here as we go along. But again, I think you'll find yourself referring to this note, to this slide, as we decipher welding notes. Okay, the types of welding processes. This is your first objective. Describe the various welding processes. The ones we're going to talk about here are arc welding. That's essentially SMAW, shield metal arc welding, or gas metal arc welding. There's a bunch of other different ones, and it just creates a shield around the arc while it's welding. The resistance welding, you know that more like spot welding. And then gas welding, that's oxygen and fuel welding. That's like this. Okay, so here's the TIG welding. There's also stick welding and MIG welding. It's really not all that important for what we're talking about, but these are the basic processes: resistance welding, spot welding, and then these are the arc welding processes, and these are the gas welding processes. Now, welding symbols show up a lot. This is like on a structural drawing. Here's what the structure looks like, and then here are the notes. Here would be your basic symbol. Here we have the leader coming down pointing to it. We've got these symbols over here that we're going to talk about. We've got the size. And then over here too, we're talking about fillet welds in here too, fillet welds. So this is really handy to know how to assign notes to drawings for welds. There's a lot of different things in a welding symbol. Again, not all of them are used on every note. We're going to break this down. The type of weld, the process for the weld, the depth of the bevel, the size of the weld, the strength for welds, some types of welds, groove size, what the finish is, contour, what the groove angle. We're going to talk about all of these different things. Then the all-around indicator and which side the material is to be. All of this stuff is covered in this drawing note. Okay, for your second objective, define the types of welded joints. You're going to get that from this slide right here. There is a butt joint, a T-joint, a lap joint where the two pieces are just kind of overlapped together, a corner joint where the two pieces meet in the corner, edge joint, that's where these two pieces are together and you would weld along the edge here. These are the types of welded joints per objective number 2. Again, here's that basic weld symbol. Okay, so we're just going to run a few of these. You're going to use this one here the most, the fillet weld, and it's like a triangle here. So that triangle will appear attached to this line here, and it always shows just like it is. I'll talk about this in a minute. This is a plug or a slot weld. A plug weld is you'll have a hole drilled and you actually weld down in that hole. And a slot, it's kind of like a plug weld, except you'll have a slot machined on one of these members, and then you'll fill that whole slot with with weld. Here's a square weld, in which case you got two pieces together like a butt joint. You have a little gap in between the two, and then you're going to lay this bead weld across. Now this is a bevel weld, where you have, it almost looks like the symbol for a countersink or a V. That's a type of a groove weld. Okay, so what it is, it's angled on both sides. So the bevel weld is only angled on one side, and it's got a different symbol. Then there's a U weld. That's where this groove is shaped like a U. And then there's an I weld, and that's the groove here is shaped like a I. Okay, so what we have here from here, E, F, G, and H, those are all groove welds. Okay, that's where you're starting with a groove in the material. See, this square weld doesn't have material taken away before you start. That's why it's a square weld. These are groove welds. That's where it has materials taken away. You can see how it's shaped like that. And these are the weld symbols for that. Okay, so how do we place these weld symbols on drawings? Okay. Here we have a T-joint, and it has a fillet weld. Okay. So in this particular case, in this view, we'll point to this with a leader. This will be our welding symbol, and it has the symbol for a fillet weld. Okay. And it's on the lower side. It's below this line. And then when it's below the line, that means near side. Now, if that triangle appears above the line, that means far side. Okay. And then if you have the triangle on both sides, that means you have the fillet on both sides of that T-joint. Okay, so where am I getting this from? If we look at our slide that has the common, here, this is arrow side. Underneath means arrow side. Above this line means other side. So below the line is arrow side, above the line is the other side of where the joint is drawn. Okay, so now another thing to notice is that, let's say this leader is coming from the opposite side. If it's coming from the opposite side, you still draw the flat side of the triangle for a fillet weld always on as it's shown right here. Okay, what am I talking about? Let me see if I go back to a different picture. Here we go. Okay, look at this. These are fillet welds here. Fillet welds. There's this little plate here. This plate here is welded to this bigger plate here. And it's a fillet weld, and it's on both sides, and it's a 1/4 inch is the throat size of that fillet weld. Okay, so when I look at the symbol over here on the other side, if you notice my 1/4 inch, the size of that is still to the left of the triangle, and the triangle still oriented the same way. So everything above and below this straight line on your note, on your welding symbol, is oriented the same way, whether the leader comes from the left or the right. This orientation of all this stuff along the line is the same. Okay, that was the point I was making. Okay, so the weld symbol is placed below the reference line if the weld is to be on the arrow side of the joint, or above the reference line if the weld is on the other side of the joint. Now, if the weld is to be on both sides, then you'll get that weld symbol placed on both sides of this reference line. I'm going to stop right there, and we'll have a separate video for the rest of this. Thank you.